Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in this galaxy far, far away. My name's Charlie Savidge,
And my name's Ito.
and today, I'm so used to "and today." I'll never not do it.
Okay,
It's
we
just
can
too many
restart.
years of making bad YouTube videos. But welcome to episode 23 of Outer Rim Radio, the podcast made by Star Wars nerds for Star Wars nerds. And we're back today with another episode. And today we are discussing Obi-Wan Kenobi, the limited series on Disney Plus, and what we think of it now that we've had an entire year to digest it. Or for you, like 30 minutes.
Well, to be fair, I had watched part of it, never got around to finishing it. Life's been hectic between everything. So I'm glad to have finally finished it.
Job
So,
promoting, getting married, doing real adult stuff.
yeah, living like an adult. It's awful. That's awful. Well, like real adults, let's talk about some Star Wars news, Charlie, before we hop into sharing our thoughts.
Once again, it's very light on Star Wars news, and I don't want to talk entirely just about random drama or the fandom menace at all times being awful. But according to literally a tweet, just a tweet, and the article didn't even bother giving this person credentials. People I follow this person. I was like, eh. But apparently Dave Filoni's film is allegedly titled Heir to the Empire, which is not that shocking to anyone, but the fact that it's literally based on a tweet concerns me.
Yeah.
And like I go to this profile, I'm like, it's not even like a journalist that I know of. Where it's like they don't even have that in their bio.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning when you see stuff like this, and I think really the importance of like highlighting this is so often these get taken out of context and like just for clickbait videos on YouTube, and then it's like, oh, let's check where this actually came from, and it's a tweet by My Time to Shine Age, or My Time to Shine Hello is their actual handle, but
Yeah.
that's the only proof in this Yahoo article. So if you're going off on the Yahoo article, you're already starting wrong.
Yahoo's a better bastion of journalism than a lot of places.
This is like probably a 200-page article on Yahoo, and I've seen the word rumor like 3 times.
Yeah.
Rumored in 2025 and all this stuff. It's like,
yeah,
no one knows.
No, and then also with the writer's strike, 2 things I've heard of is that also apparently like actors and other just general Hollywood workers may also go on strike, and that's the thing that's possibly happening. They're in talks with that. And additionally, we know that season 2 of Andor has been affected, and season 4 of The Mandalorian have both been affected by the writer's strike thus far. I think Ahsoka's so far along that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna end up hearing about a lot of these movies because I think it's like important in context. With these strikes, people kind of forget how long it takes for post-production for these for most Disney franchises. So like Marvel, the movies that were getting delayed, some of them got leaked because the writers went on strike.
Blade one of the movies?
Yeah, Blade was one of them, and it's not scheduled for release for at least 3 years.
Yeah. Like, it's 2025, 2026.
So there's a movie that's coming out in 3 years that's now delayed.
Because it's still being written.
So there's stuff I'm sure that's being delayed in Hollywood right now with Star Wars that we don't even know. It's
entirely possible. I mean, and we did get an update. Apparently the Taika Waititi movie is still happening, but I don't think this helps, and I forget who it was in the interview. They made a comment about him being just busy with other things, and they were kind of poking fun of him being just taking his time, his sweet time.
So,
which is entirely understandable because obviously Taika Waititi does a lot, but
yeah, he does a lot, but also he's a pretty interesting guy when it comes to writing, and he follows a pretty similar method to Anne Lamott, who's a novelist and a short story author, just a very great author. He basically will create a project, write the whole thing out. That's his first draft, right? And then he'll just store it in his drawer for a year, and then he literally won't look at it for 365 days. So his entire process is about going slow through things,
Yeah.
and he's a very like he's very mystic in that way. It's very much about the muses and feeling connected. And all of this is to
And also
say
it gives
that anything to delay what's already happening is not going to be good for what's
yeah.
gonna happen. Like he likes to take his time. So
Yeah. And it's also like with that, when you do that as like a writer, you get like a fresh pair of eyes. Even literally like sleeping on something and reviewing your draft and being like, oh, why did I type this like this? When you're just like reading
yeah,
it to yourself, create that distance.
I mean, we can see by all the projects he's worked on, he's a pretty consistent. I mean, he worked on a variety of different projects, but in this, like, I think the closest analog is looking at another blockbuster AAA movies that he's done, which is Thor Ragnarok. And, it's that similar. It's gonna be
Yeah.
similar in production style, um, not in the actual how it will look on screen, but just that
Yeah.
lots of CGI, lots of money being thrown at things, big wig actors.
Also, did you see oh shoot, it was that movie that looks a lot like Star Wars from one of the original Rogue One writers.
I
And
did
it's
not.
with ILM. It looks pretty good. It's like about AI taking over because that's timely. But
Well, speaking of AI taking over, Charlie, the next headline you have on here is, or the quote, I should say, it seems like it was written by the worst version of ChatGPT. I'm just gonna read it. I'm just gonna read
Please
everybody
do.
this quote from Freddie Prinze Jr., which, if you don't know, he's the voice of Canon Jarrus, both as a Padawan and both as an adult, which was really unsettling when I saw that in Bad Batch. But that's a whole
And the spirit, but you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah. He says, I'm done with canon. I'm too old for that stuff. I grew up watching Star Trek more anyways. They had more Star Trek sex in Star Trek, man. Nobody gets laid in Star Wars.
He has a child in Star Wars. We couldn't draw him fucking in a kid's cartoon. But given the political state, I mean, that would be pretty funny. That'd be a topic. But anyway,
I mean,
obviously that wasn't going to be on Disney XD.
I get them being like, "Hey, I'm too old for this," but man,
In all fairness, I feel like he said this repeatedly in interviews, and then just like people now latched onto it because he had something outrageous to it because people won't stop asking him about it. And I swear to God, this is like the second or third interview where they've asked him because he, from what I recall, and I don't have a source on this, they literally saw it on TikTok. It was like, one of those Star Wars fan pages that just like clips everything ever. Of any interview that's ever existed in Star Wars, and then the channels get deleted because they just steal all their content. But he was literally like, he said he didn't want to come back and do it for The Rise of Skywalker, and he said he didn't want to come back and he didn't want to do it for when Kanan was a kid because he thought it was weird.
because it was.
And his character, spoilers if you haven't watched Rebels, la 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 la, dies, so I feel like it'd be pretty hard to, swing on that one. But anyways,
Last bit of news, and this is nothing news.
also everyone's fucking in Star Wars. Have you seen Lando Calrissian?
Yeah, he's slinging it. And last bit of news. And we're really only talking about this because I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So in Disney World, they are set to close the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, which was basically, I don't know how to describe it, anything as like an overpriced character hotel.
Yeah, it's role playing if for people with lots of money, but I swear to God, every time I've seen any TikTok, it's like Disney invited me here. Like Disney was very convinced you can milk Star Wars fans, and which to a certain extent is true.
Oh yeah.
But there is just so much goddamn stuff that it's like I want, but I can't sustain a living off of buying Star Wars shit constantly.
Yeah, it's literally the voyage is around like $1,200 for just a day, and some of the packages are like $6,000 for.
Yeah, I'm
for
sorry,
family
that's more than like a mortgage payment.
Right, and no one is going to Disney for 2 days, right? Like this is already an insanely expensive trip for a family. So this is like, it's just some rich people crap, and I just always thought it was really funny. And in full transparency, like my mom's a Disney adult in the Star Wars sense, And like my mom has wanted to go to these kind of stuff, but then I'm just thinking about like, God, that is so expensive.
I feel
That's
like, yeah.
that's a lot of cash.
Also, I feel like with all those things, it feels weird to go if you're like not like trying to cosplay or something. It's
Yeah, if you're just going to go and not in that. But yeah,
yeah, because it's like
it's
wouldn't the fun
crazy.
be like role playing off of it? It's just like that just seems tiring. That doesn't sound like a vacation. That feels like
Yeah, it takes $6,000 for 2 days to just basically have the same experience as all the people who go to Comic-Con.
yeah, just play D&D with your like the Star Wars D20 game with your friends.
Oh, true. That's a whole nother episode, Charlie. We got to move on. I'm gonna go on a tangent.
No, that's actually gonna be the spin-off show.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, we'll just do a Star Wars role-playing game. Yeah, let's do it, Charlie. I'm totally done. Oh, I guess we should talk about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, which finally.
Finally, yeah. So, obviously, if you haven't watched it, you've had a year. I've somehow avoided spoilers for most of this. So, if you haven't in the last year, I'm sorry, but I did it. So, we're
It's
done.
possible.
We're cutting it off. So if you need to tune out, tune out. But Obi-Wan. We'll give our thoughts on this in a second, but just as kind of a plot setup for anybody who's watching this after a long time and kind of what's a reminder about how the show starts. Obi-Wan is basically after 10 years of Obi-Wan being in exile on Tatooine, he is unexpectedly tasked with a quest to help rescue a young Princess Leia who has been kidnapped. Now Obi-Wan, he's kind of just forced to, overcome his internal pain, confront his past, accept his failings, if he's to move on and protect young Luke and Leia. And yeah, I mean, overall, this show got great reception.
Yeah.
It was by critics and fans. There was a ton of TikTok edits of it, which is why I saw one scene just like over and over, and I was like trying to scroll through and not see it.
Which scene, if you
It's
don't
like, I'm
mind
gonna
me
watch
asking?
It's in the finale. When he slices off the piece of his helmet.
Oh yeah, I've seen that 1,000 times. That edit,
1,000 times.
that paired
So
with the Twilight Apprentice episode of Rebels.
Oh really? A lot of what I've seen is
because
like
Ahsoka cuts off one half of the mask and Obi-Wan cuts off the other.
Oh, that's a cool touch. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. We're going to kind of break that down episode by episode, mostly because I watched this really recently, and Charlie's kind of talking about this perspective. And like
I rewatched it this week, to be fair.
Yeah, but still, like this is a lot more fresh and a lot more exciting for me than it was for you.
Yeah.
But basically, first episode, we're kind of just thrown into the lives of these Inquisitors, the Grand Inquisitor, fifth brother, and the third sister, who's Reva. They're on Tatooine hunting down a Jedi, which is really cool. I mean, I love the opening. You can kind of see the Grand Inquisitor as he's in person. He's just very charismatic and manipulative. He very much represents like that more Palpatine side of the Sith, where it's just like you're making your words work for you and making your enemy work against himself. As opposed to Reva, who's just like a blunt force trauma villain like Darth Vader, just like, oh, well, why would I do that when I could just torture you or stab you or throw a knife?
I'm going to cut off your hand. Why don't I just kill you here?
Yeah, I'll just murder you. And literally, that was...
Which I appreciate.
This was a slow episode, and that was like... I did hear complaints about this when this came out.
Yeah.
And, I mean...
And that's why 1 and 2 came out the same day.
Yeah, and we watched 1 and 2. This is our second time watching it now, Elizabeth and I, and it was slow. I mean, 1 is slow, without a doubt. It's more of just like they split it up, and it should have just been one big, almost movie length.
Yeah, this episode. Yeah. Well, that's
the
one
only
thing
that this episode really serves to do is just show like this is the stakes of Obi-Wan not being involved is the Jedi Nari.
Yeah.
You see his hanging corpse the next day at the end of the episode, and then obviously this is where they set everything up with Bail and
because
Kenobi.
Nari very much shows that it gives it like establishes that Obi-Wan is not what he used to after episode 3, or like before episode 3, before Revenge
Right.
of the Sith. He's
Yeah.
not the hero that we have been knowing. And like, even though later on throughout the show we discover that's still in him, he has to go on like that journey himself. He doesn't think he is. That's why, like, when Bale approaches him and he's like, I need your help, he's like, I can't do it.
Yeah, and it's more of just setting up the emotions of where we're at for the show, which for a 6-episode show, it can be a little bit taxing for a viewer, but at the same time it kind of had to happen. And I did like the touch with Nari and like saying like, oh, the Jedi are still out there. But at the same time, they're out there and they're dying every day.
Yeah.
So, which it's kind of important when we get later into the show where, where he's on the ship with everybody being rescued by the path. And he basically says, you've spent 10 years protecting the Jedi. It's time let me repay you, is what he says. And it does set that up. Him realizing like they do have to help people, and that's what Nari was telling him. And then Nari ends up dead because he didn't help him out.
Yep.
Which, obviously, if he helped Nari, I'm sure the entire plot line would be very different. But
yeah,
it
would have been very convenient if 2 Jedi could go on this adventure.
Yeah, it would have been. Well, speaking of that, I want to move into the second episode because there was a character I really like. So I want to talk about him here in a second. But second episode, basically, we're getting more into. I mean, we're sent straight to Daio, which is this kind of backwater, outer rim, metropolitan.
It looks very like reminiscent of like the Coruscant underworld, all the neon signs and
and
industrial.
what's that other planet on Bad Batch?
Oh shoot, I know what you're talking about.
But you know what I'm talking about, where it's just that underground shady planet.
Yeah.
Where you're not surprised when Obi-Wan is being tracked by half of the city, essentially, because they're all bounty hunters or scoundrels or thieves.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally says, tell all the scum of this. Riva says, tell all the scum of the city we're looking. You're looking for him.
Yeah, which also one of my favorite characters designs ever comes from this show. And that is walking dinosaur with gun.
Okay. Yeah, I that has been so funny because I don't think Elizabeth noticed it the first time, and I pointed out this time. I was like, "That's just a velociraptor." She was just kind of looking at it. She's like, "What?
It's so good."
And then he's at a rooftop fight. Yeah, that was wild.
But Ord Mantell was the planet.
Ord Mantell, thank you. Yeah, Dayu was really interesting. Obviously, we get into, hey, we're tracking him down. He's saving Leia, and you're establishing everything that's happening with Leia, and her feelings, and not her distrust for Obi-Wan because he's hiding something. We get the big reveal that Anakin's still alive. I mean, obviously we know that, but as from a
plot I love that Obi-Wan didn't know.
Yeah, and that makes it a lot better. He assumed he left him there to die. I mean, now he has to go through.
Understandably, Obi-Wan has a bad habit of doing that to people who end up becoming Sith.
Well, part of it is mercy. I mean, we could talk about that in a second. But I want to hop into this. Haja Estra.
I love Haja.
Haja I was very surprised when I first watched this. I remember watching this a while back, and the first view of it, and I was like, God, this guy's a fucking prick. Like, he's tricking all these people, but he does redeem himself in the end.
Yeah.
And we can get a little bit more into that as we talk on, but I thought it was interesting that it was like he was showing that like being a Jedi, even just a fake Jedi, means a lot more. It means a lot more than the fancy robes and the lightsaber or even the Force. Yeah. He was willing to step up and sacrifice him. In the end, Obi-Wan trusts him.
Yeah.
And that was huge.
Yeah. And what I love about his character is that, like, to a certain extent, Haja doesn't necessarily believe in himself to do good. But I think it gives him so much more extra confidence to when Obi-Wan puts his faith in him to, like, trust him to make sure Leia gets out all right. And to, like, do all these other things. And that he can at least slow down the Inquisitor, even if it's the funniest part.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, he always, no matter the step, no matter how small, it has impact. But it does remind me a little bit of Han, and those type of scoundrel characters, the good scoundrel characters
yeah.
in Star Wars, where it's that like I may not believe in the Force or good or any of this stuff, but then their actions say otherwise,
Yep.
and they're putting their actions where their heart is, but their mouth is saying something different, which is very compelling. Um, so I really thought Haja demonstrated in an odd roundabout way. It was a great character to kind of demonstrate
Yeah.
the hope
Yeah.
that just Obi-Wan being alive and being present and being around meant to people. And it gave you the feeling of like, I can see why all these people on the path were like, we would rather risk dying than you leave.
Yep.
We'll figure it out. Like, you can't leave now. And after everything we've sacrificed, after everything that happens, we'll talk about that here in a second with Tala, but like, that was big. Anything else with this episode? I mean, honestly, this episode is just a
Do you want to
mouth
talk
and
about the
face.
clone briefly?
Oh yeah, Tamora Morrison. Thank you.
More
Yeah,
Tim. More Tim.
yeah. I always get to get a cameo from Tim. So in this episode, if you don't remember, on the streets of Dayu, it's like one of the first scenes as he walks in. There is sitting on the ground is an old clone, helmet off, begging. He says something along the lines of help a veteran get a meal or something like that.
Help a
Obi-Wan
veteran
kind
get
of
a warm meal. Yeah.
yeah, and Obi-Wan kind of stares him for a few seconds, and then just like after kind of some introspection, tosses a coin in. And it was good to kind of just see like no matter where he turns, Obi-Wan can't escape past.
Yeah.
Although
Also,
it
I
was
loved
kind
it
of
was a 501st clone at that.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It was a 501st clone, so it adds a lot of depth to the fact that he's never going to be able to escape that past. Which is a big theme of this show, right?
Yeah.
You can't run from your past. You can only fight for a better future. That's basically along the lines of what Tala says, in one of the episodes. I mean, pretty soon, close to her death.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was one of the things about this show, all in all. It had a vision, a really close, like, this is what we are going to say.
Yeah.
This is what Obi-Wan represents at this period in his life. We're going to talk about that. And it did it. And it didn't stray too far from that. And as much as like, hey, it was a short run, it was a 6-episode show, and there will be no more after this is it. Like, it fleshed out the rest of Obi-Wan that we need, right?
Yeah.
This did that perfectly.
Agreed. Not that I don't want more Ewan McGregor, because we all
right.
want
Oh
more
yeah,
Ewan
he
McGregor.
did a great job. But everything it touches on, it does really well, and it moves you from planet to planet and talks a little bit more about the Empire that is interesting. In the first episode, you're kind of getting the idea of, okay, this is how they hunted Jedi. And the second one, it's okay. The Inquisitors wouldn't stop at anything. There's something going on with Reva, talking about hope, kind of giving the first inklings into what's going to happen between Leia, what's going to happen to Obi-Wan. And then we move into the third episode, which kind of really, this is where things start to kick off. This is the big one. I mean, this is probably the coolest episode in the entire one. But they land on Mupuzo.
Yeah. Also, that's a great name for a planet. It's a great Star Wars planet name.
It definitely rolls off the tongue. Darth Vader's ordered her to go after. Before I get into this, I do want to mention in the second episode, the one thing really worth mentioning at the end of that is the Darth Vader in the back to tank.
Yeah. Oh, also, I love how they like fake kill the
Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, and the Easter egg of that kid that helps. That in the credits is listed as Corin Horn, who is like an EU character.
Cool.
Who then becomes a pilot, was part of Rogue Squadron, and then becomes a Jedi. So, fun fact.
Look at you, Charlie, knowing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was the one fun fact where I was like, this one might actually ever come up at some point.
Look at you, Charlie.
I mean,
You
hey,
got
we're
it
going
in.
to that new Republic era with Mando and everything.
No,
So
you got it. You got to get it in.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, super cool. All right, back to that, but that's super cool. Um, oh God, there was something that I really didn't even. I think this is a really funny moment. Where my wife and I were watching this, and Frick, right? That's his name, the mole guy.
Oh yeah.
So Frick was pulling up, and like they've established this is an Empire planet, and like it's occupied and all this stuff.
It's the best.
And literally, as they're pulling up, he's got the Empire symbol on the back of his loader, and
the parallels are so real on this character.
so okay, thank you. So what Elizabeth says, and this is a little bit political, but Elizabeth says, is this a Star Wars Trump supporter? And I'm like, oh no, he's just like a normal guy. I'm like, he's on an Imperial planet. He has to have it. I'm sure. Like,
No,
it's
he's
fine.
totally
No, and the straight up, this
he's
dude's
totally
like
just like
selling
Southern.
them
It's a
out.
Confederate flag thing. It's so funny.
And I was thinking about it after. I was like, they really just made the guy who rats them out a straight up rodent, like a straight up alien rodent. Like, he was a straight up naked. Like, what's the mole? What
He's
are
a
the name of
naked
the
mole
moles?
rat. Yeah.
No, not those. They're the ones that have the like star. Oh, it's a star-nosed mole. That's what I was looking for.
Okay,
Because he has
yes.
all these like creeping tendrils off the side of his mouth, which I think it helps him like sense things underground or something like that.
I love how he's always like, nothing wrong with a little bit of order.
Nothing wrong with a little bit of order.
Oh my
Just
god.
like straight up, just.
I like
sipping
the
tea
increasing amount of
old-fashioned.
Southern Star Wars characters in like the past 5 years.
Yeah, it's
You have
weird.
you got this guy, you got the guy from Mando season 2 that Bill Burr shoots.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And then you got, now we got Mosey and
Mosey. Yeah, Frick was that was an interesting character, and I thought that was really cool just to kind of see the perspective of like how we read that differently, and like how shocking that was to me when I was like, oh god, you
also
were right.
I'm so confused. Does he just pick up the stormtroopers every day? They have this relationship.
So yeah, it was kind of
And I'm like, you're not
feeling,
hauling any like resources. So you just chilling? Do you get
my feeling is like he's a miner on this planet, and like the Empire doesn't support.
Bro, he's
its
the man
own
of your
grunts.
class. No.
He doesn't support its own troops. Like the stormtroopers are left to die. We have countless stories of them being left to freeze to death or starve to death on remote planets. And this seemed like one of those. It's like, oh, they forgot to pick us up. Frick's out there just like, hey, he says the quarry's running dry when they ask him later. So that's why he didn't have anything on the back.
Oh yeah,
from what I understood. So
they do deplete them
detail.
resources.
Yeah, and that's what they're strip mining the entire thing for like Valerium or something like that. They say it later on. Though the one unnamed
The unobtainium baby.
Unobtainium, nice. Yeah, what is the name of that Inquisitor? They never say her name, but she looks kind of like a Twi'lek.
Oh, like the other green one that's a girl?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that one the third? Oh.
No, third sister's Reva.
Let me pull up Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes to answer this.
Yeah, honestly, you might have to, because I don't know.
I feel like it's the fastest way to do it. Anyway. Yeah, I wish that character got more speaking roles, because the fifth brother is like more antagonistic.
Yeah, the fifth brother's awesome. I think she's the fourth sister, from what I remember. Yeah, okay, so that's the fourth sister. She was pretty cool. I mean, she's kind of a side character. I kind of like that she's just kind of in the background, menacing. I'm trying to look up.
Watch, she'll be the only one that's not in the game, though. Yeah, I was right. She's the only one not in the game. You have the Grand Inquisitor second sister, third sister. Yeah, you have fifth brother, seventh sister, eighth brother, ninth sister.
Dude, I can't even find it. What race she's in? It just says humanoid.
Yeah, not everything in Star Wars is named. Can't all be Christians.
True. True.
Yeah,
That meme will never die.
I do really like this episode a lot.
Well, I mean, you get so much in on
And
this. I mean, and that's
plus
what it was.
they establish the path. We find out
Yeah,
Quinlan Voss is alive.
it's a 48-minute episode, and they establish everything you just said. They kind of show that there's people fighting against the Empire in the Empire, which is a big thing. Like, how were the rebels able to get in? And they talk about spies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which Tala is a great character to begin with.
Yeah, I love Tala.
And it's kind of crazy to think about how the fact that like I was at her death like upset, like, and she was only in 3 episodes,
right?
And so this is a 48-minute show, and honestly on Disney Plus, like, there's 10 minutes of credits, it always feels like. So it's like a 38-minute screen time, it feels like. But yeah, like, you get in all of that. You're showing the Inquisitors hunting them on the show. There's very tense, and then Darth Vader shows up. They have the moments where Darth Vader is just crushing through the city, murdering people left and right, I'm assuming trying to draw out Obi-Wan.
Yep. That's exactly like what the Grand Inquisitor talked about. If something's gonna go wrong, the Jedi will always step in to help. They hunt themselves.
Well, there's that quote from him in the very first episode, which is why I think the Grand Inquisitor is such an interesting villain. The key to hunting Jedi is patience.
Yeah.
And that was super cool. I mean, it was very interesting to see, like, the Grand Inquisitor. I wasn't expecting it at first, but to be the foil to Vader.
Right.
And we can talk about that with the 6th episode a little bit more, but in this episode, like, you can tell, like, Vader is not out here for really anything of strategic priority to the Empire. He's literally just out here to get revenge on Kenobi. I mean, he sets him on fire. He's trying to torture him and bring him through the pain that Obi-Wan caused him. And the only way the reason they make it out is because, well, Tala saves him.
Yep.
It was a fantastic episode.
Also, Tala joins the great list of characters that defect from the Empire.
Oh yeah.
Like, you got Callus and Rebels, Wedge and Tilly's. That was also shown in Rebels. I mean, I feel like we're gonna see more of that in like Andor season 2. And then you have the Alphabet Squadron books, which delve into that. Which I can't wait until we get into talking about those books. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that will be fun. But yeah, that episode was so impactful, and it did so much so quick. And I just remember watching it and just being like, wow. I think the first 2 episodes were a little slow, but after this, like, you kind of get the idea of like why this show existed, like why there was so much money, and for me, why there was so much hype. Yeah. Not that I never expected the show to not be amazing.
Yeah, I could literally just watch it if he was just wandering around the desert for... Remember when we were trying to predict what this show was? That was such a funny time.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes to show you, like...
Tusken Raiders?
Star Wars fans are...
Commander Cody?
Are with, yeah, well, some of that I wish. I would like to see more of the those clones.
At least. Oh wait, characters. Shit! You haven't watched Bad Batch, anyways.
No, I'm getting into it, so don't worry about it. But we won't talk about that for my sake. But it's really interesting because as you move into the 4th episode, now we've set up a lot of the stakes. We've set up Vader. We set up Tala, who, like, you think is going to be a side character at first, just getting from planet to planet, but now we're in the thick of what the show actually is. And the 4th episode, they're Obi-Wan and Tala have to infiltrate the Fortress Inquisitorius. And it's like, they're straight in the belly of the beast. This was such a tense episode.
My favorite thing. No one's ever done that before. Stares at Cal Kestis.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't think that word would ever get out about that.
No.
Bud seemed surprised when Grease told him, but
yeah, no one seemed to know, which makes sense. And I like that kind of feeling as a Star Wars fan of, like, you can see the politics playing out in the Empire, like it's its own undoing.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
It's the same things people talked about, that they talk about with the Republic. It's like, oh, it was just people bickering and making trade alliances behind each other's back. It's like that's just what happens in the Empire, anyways. It's inevitable in these
Yeah,
form of
and then
corrupt
you get
government.
more of that in Jedi Survivor. You get so much more of that in Andor, which I can't wait to do episodes on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it was super cool to see this, to see. I mean, some of this, like you could argue, like what why is Leia just so like beyond her years and able to ward off these
Why
things?
did she
But
deliver the greatest roast of all time in episode 1? You don't need manners when speaking to a lower life form. Well, I guess I don't need manners when I'm talking to you.
yeah, yeah, and but I will say, like, as much as you could say that, there was never a moment in which I wasn't like, yeah, this is not 10-year-old Leia,
Right, that's
you
how
know.
I felt. As much
And
as the internet,
she
people complain about
she
everything.
talked, yeah, and people complain about this shit all the time, but she was realistically stubborn until the consequences were right in front of her.
Yep.
And I did find this interesting because I was like, why is there's these brief moments during that kind of like, oh my god, it's a very tense scene, she's about to torture a child, and then Riva kind of relents just a little bit every time, which
Yep.
I didn't think about it then, but gives you a lot into the psyche of her. Like, she doesn't want to hurt this kid
Yep.
one way or another. She's trying to protect herself in a way. She's trying to go after Anakin, and she'll do it by any means necessary, but she doesn't want to have to hurt her if she didn't have to.
Yeah.
Whereas with Vader, I mean, we've seen countless different stories in this. He'll fucking torture anybody if he has to.
Dude, he will literally just murder children.
Just straight up. Just continuously murdered children. I mean, yeah. So I thought this was a really cool episode. We got to see a lot more of the Inquisitorius than I mean, and when this came out, we really hadn't
Yeah.
seen too much of it. I mean, even in Jedi Fallen Order, it's really you're just like on the outskirts
You
of it,
run from them.
breaking in. You run from them, and then you swim up through the ocean. That's really it. But it was really cool. This episode established a lot more. You get Vader, in this, Vader's getting pissed off at the third sister.
Yeah, when he storms in and yells at her, I love that.
And goes to force choke her, and the only thing that saved her was the fact that she's so resourceful. And you're like, oh, and I remember sitting there for a second. I'm like, how did she place? What in the sci-fi bullshit is this? How did she get a
And then it
tracker on the
makes
ship?
perfect sense.
And then you're like, oh my god, it was Lola. She was playing with it the whole time. I was like, that's fucking genius. I
Yep.
was so shocked by that because I was sitting here. I was like, that's stupid. There's no way you got that on that ship. That's so dumb. So, which is cool. I like that she didn't show her hand to Darth Vader either. It made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
She wasn't as rash as everybody was saying she was. She was deeply passionate. She was filled with hatred for Vader.
Yeah.
She wasn't reckless. She was just so blinded by her goal that she would do anything to get there.
Yup.
But yeah, so then we moved on into the 5th episode, and this is where we get to see more of one Hayden Christensen acting, bringing him into this with the scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin are training, and that kind of just like
I love that use of a parallel throughout.
Yeah, throughout the entire show. I mean, even into the finale, they use this. This is a parallel. I mean, I was not expecting for how much they would use this one fight to structure this entire episode, and then the final fight. They mirror a lot of the scenes and the motion.
Yeah, literally, they do the back-to-back thing. Like, you can tell it's like, yes, these people have sparred literally thousands of times. Even if Vader is so much of a different like beast altogether than Anakin was, that's still the same guy at the end of the day who has the same habits.
Yeah, exactly. And habits is the great word for it. I mean, none of us are fighters, but that's the thing. Like, when you hear swordsmen talk about this kind of stuff, like, if you train with someone, like, this person, you're either going to have an advantage of, or they're going to have an advantage over you. You see it with fighters who are close friends.
Yeah,
Like, it's
I
happened in
mean,
the
hell, you see
UFC.
it in fighting games.
Yeah, like it's just a very basic principle. Is like once you're tuned to see these things repeat. So I really loved that because one, it was a really great parallel, but two, it was realistic.
Right.
It made you feel like, hey, this is Master and Padawan.
Yep.
For better or worse, they're fighting. But yeah, it was really cool. I was really surprised at first by the Inquisitor promotion for Riva. I was kind of
Yeah.
like, okay. I mean, it ended up really paying off, but I liked that
Yeah.
they had this. Hey, we're gonna siege this fucking facility on Jabim, and it's kind of just this really long, high stakes episode, kind of feeling out a lot of the feelings. You're getting to see what Riva's true identity was. And I literally, when I was watching, I was so proud of myself when I went back and watched the first episode again, because I'd only watched episode 1 and 2
Right.
when they came out originally. And I was like, I wonder if that's Riva. And I was looking at the youngling in the first episode. And I was like, "Oh my god, she just revealed it. It's her." So that was cool, and I thought that was a cool use. Like, and it
Yeah.
really goes to show you this was there was almost no fat on this show. And while I want to complain about how slow episode 1 felt, literally there was no fat to it.
Yeah. I don't think. Yeah. I don't think there was anything in Nexus. There wasn't really any like filler. Like it. Like while it's like tonally slow or like maybe not the most interesting thing in the world to watch an old man go to a depressing job every day, that's the reality he was living, and that's kind of important to like set the ground for what's going to happen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and it was one of those things where, like, I was thinking about it after the fact and I was like, I guarantee, like, part of the reason these are such, like, this episode's 38 minutes, this episode's 50, like 51, and this episode's 42, which you see in episodic shows. But
Yeah.
like, I was really, I said, and I'm like, they literally, I wonder how far they cut this down, because this show is so clean.
Yeah.
It's all muscle, no fat. And I really love that about this. And this fifth episode really showed like how much everything winded together to get you to this, essentially getting to Riva fighting Darth Vader at the end of this. And
Which also
and this,
great underrated fight.
oh, and it was the best. And we could talk about that a little bit more, but it just, everything led to getting to this point that would lead to Obi-Wan and Anakin having this really satisfying fight, and then it's done. You know, you know. So yeah, the Riva part was amazing. You're getting this feeling of, oh my god, like, it's never directly said, because a lot of the times this is one of my complaints about the original trilogy. I can feel your conflict. That, but as the audience, we have no way to know that,
Right.
other than Luke just saying that. We see that in several instances in Star Wars, but in a lot of the new shows, what I've liked is that, from a writing standpoint, they're showing, not telling.
Exactly.
And in this, you knew she had conflict. I mean, you could tell she was hesitating to hurt Leia at times. She had shown mercy, but then shown violent aggression. Like, there's an immense amount of pain that she's feeling, and it mirrors Darth Vader a lot.
Yes.
Which was very interesting at times. Yeah, I can't stress more how good of an episode this was. And like, episode, you're like, oh my god, Obi-Wan's he's surrendering himself to Riva. Why would he do that? And then he's got this master plan to, like, oh no, what does he say? Oh, you're not giving me to Darth Vader, I'm giving Darth Vader to you.
Yep.
And you're like, holy shit, like, that's badass. One, but two, like, he's really figured her out. And you're kind of getting this feeling of like, this is Obi-Wan, the tactician, the general.
Ooh,
the
General
Jedi.
Kenobi. Yeah.
He's back.
Yeah. He's
Straight
in
up.
full swing after Inquisitorius. Like,
Which, speaking of Inquisitorius, let's talk about the end. That
okay.
twist was fucking bad. As much as I hate the, like, oh, this happens so much in new Star Wars, in my opinion. Someone gets stabbed in the fucking chest and
They don't die.
like, I'm good. We're back.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting.
Although I think this provides the best insight that we've seen into this. Of like, I mean, it even establishes it twice in the same episode, where we see that the other guy got stabbed and now he's back, and he's like, what revenge does for like healing,
Yeah, what
the will to
revenge
live
does
or
for
whatever.
your will to live. Yeah. Um,
And I was like, I love that we established that because all she's thinking about is a chance at revenge, another way to like prove herself. Like,
like if you think about Maul as a character, which is a strange
Sissa
parallel to
Fist,
pull into
Sissa
this,
Fist.
he refuses to die.
Yes.
And but how he felt about Kenobi and his revenge he wanted, and the revenge he wanted against Palpatine. That is what was that style of anger, that feeling was what was carrying Reva forward, and you felt that
Yeah.
on screen. Which fantastic acting on the actress's part.
Yeah, Moses Ingram.
Yeah, Moses Ingram. I mean, beautiful job. Like, she portrayed so much anger and emotion into this that was just, hats off to her. Um, yeah, yeah,
I love like I always love like, the ability to have a redemption arc, and I also like that this character we can kind of move forward with by the
yeah,
end of it.
yeah. It's not over, which it was not completely satisfying. Like, part of me wanted to, at the end
Yeah.
of this, her to
But I
be
also
dead.
think that's also what makes Star Wars great sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I think we can get into the sixth episode a little bit, talk about the plot, and then we can kind of move into that, because, like, I think there is a little bit of building that even makes that a little bit more satisfying. You know, she's pursuing Luke on Tatooine, which for me, I did have a little bit of trouble kind of understanding this, why Reva went after Luke. What was your take on that?
I think she was still trying, as much as she wanted revenge of Vader, I also think there's like this dichotomy where she wants his approval. She doesn't just want to prove it to him, but also kind of prove it to herself. And I think it's very intentional that like the reason why the killing younglings thing exists in episode 3 is that was George Lucas's way of showing Vader fully committing to the dark side. Like that is like the actual worst and cruelest thing you can do
Yeah.
is to slaughter children without a second thought. And I think she was trying to prove to herself, because this far she had only survived by basically using the dark side and being a terrible person. But she was affected by that. Like that's her own trauma and her succumbing into that. She doesn't want to be that, but she feels like she has to.
Yeah, and I mean, I get why she wanted to do it, but part of it is like, I thought their setup. This is my one critique of the show. I thought their setup for her just like realizing Luke was the son. I mean, that was my expectation.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the son of Anakin Skywalker. I
Yeah.
was like, that's how did you figure that out? That's kind of a leap. Like, all in Bale's transmission is like, the boy. This is really all he says, like Tatooine, blah 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 blah, the
Boy.
boy, blah
Well,
blah blah
and
blah.
Owen. Or
Owen,
Lars. Whatever it
yeah,
was.
it was Owen, is what it says. So, because she comes down and then it's like, I'm looking for a farmer named Owen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a cool. Going past that, it was cool. That did bother me a little bit, but it was really cool to have that scene where like she's looking down at Luke to strike him down and sees herself.
Yep. I
You
love
know,
that.
you can kind of see that there's still, basically what that to me was just empathy.
Yeah.
She realized in a second, she put herself in that place, realized she was displacing her pain onto someone just like Anakin basically did to her, and then she goes and she leaves it. And that was a great ending to that character. Which, does she find complete peace? No, she probably not. It's a very gray ending to that character, but it definitely did kind of highlight Obi-Wan, in
Yeah.
my opinion, where it kind of shows that like mercy is a choice.
Yeah.
People critique, oh, just the Jedi should just kill more people. But in these situations, like, mercy is not for it.
Yeah.
For her, mercy wasn't for for Luke, mercy was for her.
Yeah.
She was not letting into those feelings. It was just great. It was
Yeah.
great emotional
And also,
writing.
I think this is like, the show's honestly, like, it's the same year, canonically, as Jedi Survivor that we just played through. And I think that's like a really great juxtaposition to where Cal is put through this unfortunate ringer that we saw in that game, where he repeatedly has to keep killing people he wants to help.
Yeah.
Like, he wants the ninth sister. Like, he's intentionally, like, trying to get her. Like, you don't have to keep being a terrible person. You don't, like, you have at some point the choice to be a better person, no matter what. And, like, Luke has that moment. He even has that moment in Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is a really weird thing to bring up. But he has a moment in Star Wars Battlefront 2 where he saves, one of the people from Inferno Squadron, the Imperial group. And then he's like, "Why did you help me if you're a rebel?" And he's like, "Because I think you can choose to be better another day." Like,
Yeah, and I think inherently, like, this is why I think Obi-Wan, you cannot talk about Star Wars as a story without talking about Obi-Wan. I don't mean the plot. I don't mean anything like that. Like what Star Wars really means, because in all of the meaningful Star Wars this mercy, hope, like what it truly means to be a Jedi is just purely transpiring through him. Like he
yeah,
is the purest form of a Jedi. It's not Yoda, who had to go off into exile for his basically his arrogance, for being blinded to not see Palpatine, and all the choices he made to the Jedi Order that led to its downfall. No,
yeah,
he's just a guy. He loses everything multiple times. I mean, we think about what happened with Sabine,
or
which not Sabine,
Satine.
Satine. Thank you,
Yeah,
uh,
Duchess Satine,
Duchess Satine. Obviously, everything that happened with Anakin,
Qui-Gon.
Qui Gon, his journey with Maul,
Yep,
throughout the movies, throughout Rebels, which that happens a lot closer to the original trilogy, the end of that, but it was it really does highlight that, and I'm glad they kept that kind of spirit of that character, where I mean he doesn't strike down Vader. He could have killed Vader. I mean,
yeah,
obviously he couldn't from a hey, this is how writing works perspective, like we wrote ourselves in this hole, but like
yeah.
in terms of the
Plot
canon,
armor.
plot armor, right? But in terms of the canon, like it was good that he did, even if he could
Yeah,
have, he was like, I can't live with myself if I kill you. Um, it really highlighted that, and I loved that it wasn't just like let's solve everything by just murdering everything, which is
yep,
great. And so in some stories, when we want a darker Star Wars tone, but this wasn't it. The darkness came out of what the Inquisitors were willing to do, not how far Obi-Wan was willing to go to save people. He knew in the end that the Force was the only way he would save people.
yep. I love that. You put that incredibly well.
Yeah, and but it's just juxtaposed, like not juxtaposed. That's a totally wrong word. It literally means the opposite. It's just so it amalgamates all into him having finally found this inner peace,
Yeah,
and we know that because boom, here comes Qui-Gon, and he said, hey, no, it wasn't. I wasn't hiding from you. You just weren't ready to see me yet. That's what he says. You weren't
yeah.
ready to see me yet.
He's like, "Yeah, I've been here a while. You just weren't
You weren't ready.
pretty."
And he goes, oh, we got a long way to go. Let's walk off into the Dune Sea, essentially.
Yeah, and
And
I love that. I love they got Liam Neeson for that.
yeah, it really. I mean, as much as I loved the fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader because they did so much, there were so many parallels.
Yeah,
It was well orchestrated. I mean, there's that chilling scene at the end where it's he's basically telling him, hey, I killed Anakin Skywalker, not you.
yeah. He provides a bit of closure, but
Yeah, but also like it's almost a like I'm sure in Vader's perspective, it's like check your fucking ego.
yeah,
Like I'm the one who killed him. Like I'm the only Anakin Skywalker was the only person capable of killing Anakin Skywalker. You know,
yeah.
and,
But
for Obi-Wan, that's letting go of his failure.
yeah, exactly. And it's
So
like that's a choice that Anakin made. Like that.
yeah,
I
100%.
mean, obviously not being in a suit of armor, that was much less the decision. But he was the one that had to fight. Also, I love the parallel of not just like the fight that had been shown the past 2 episodes or whatever, but I love that he was like, "I'll do what I must" again. The same lines from episode 3.
Yeah, he said, "I'll do what I must." I mean, we have them in the back to tanks and kind of those scenes mirroring each other.
Yep.
We have, I mean, at the very end, we have the ultimate parallel, him saying hello there to young Luke.
Love it.
At the end, which, it was kind of cool to kind of see Owen.
Hello there.
Let him have a normal life. It was great to kind of see how Luke was first introduced to old Ben. You know, that wizard that lives across the Dune Sea or whatever the hell he says.
That guy with that ancient hokey religion.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I just sometimes in Star Wars it can get a little bit difficult because everybody tries to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Right. And the one thing I will say about this, that I am just sitting here so in love with having watched this show, was that it wasn't anything but paying service to what came before the original trilogy. And sometimes and that's what I loved about Rogue One. Like, it was a story that felt it existed into something that was purely Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that is my biggest complaint about the prequels. It's my biggest complaint about the sequels, is sometimes it just feels like, yeah, there's some nostalgia going on, or we have these great characters.
It feels so surface level at times. Like,
yeah, they're reinventing everything rather than just saying, like, no, let's show what Star Wars is truly about. And that it's 100% why they were able to do what they're doing with Andor, is because they showed in Rogue One, like, there is something about these characters who don't have the Force, who don't have these abilities, but they are fighting for something else.
Yeah, and it's still Star Wars.
Right.
And I love that.
Star Wars becomes about, the Force is hope. When they're saying, may the Force be with you, that's hope. That's wishing someone good luck. That's wishing for them to, be just, to be merciful, to be virtuous.
Yeah.
And this show was, I mean, in the end, his final acts are virtuous. He's merciful.
Right.
For Obi-Wan. He spares Darth Vader, when we can talk about plot armor one way or another, but he could have killed Reva.
Yeah.
He could have
But that's not who he is.
Kill
and that's
herself.
What makes it good.
Yeah. I mean, even in the end, he's not like, he does this with every character too. Like, it would had to be choice and picked, because think about the last fight he has with Maul.
Yep.
When he strikes Maul down, he shows him mercy by holding him in his final moments.
Yeah, and he holds him the same way he held Satine, the same way he held Qui-Gon.
Yep. So.
Yeah. Also, can we appreciate how good Joel Edgerton was as an actor in this show? The Owen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he did a great job. Great job.
Especially for the person that was literally just cast for being a few seconds of Phantom, or in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, well, he was in
episode 2 and 3.
He was in Attack of the Clones too.
Yeah, so that's right. Because they went and visited. But
Yeah.
literally, just the fact that that casting was literally done so long ago, and Joel Edgerton is actually such a fantastic actor, and he delivers one of my favorite lines in this entire show, where Reva's like, "You love him like he's your own," and he's like, "He is my own." Like, I love that.
It was so good. And that's the thing about this, is like, there's too often in Star Wars, there's fan service that's just quote unquote fan service, where it's like, oh, let's reference this lightsaber, or there's this Easter egg, or this blah blah blah.
Did you know Chopper's in the background in Rogue One? It's like, yeah, I love it, but still.
But in this, it's like, no, we need to establish that, like, these characters existed outside of this. They're real.
Yeah.
Like,
also, R2D2 and C3PO were in this show too, but
yeah. And was that important?
No, because I watched it again and totally forgot about it until I watched the Easter eggs. Like, forgot about That one kid's name.
But it's more important to establish that, like,
Yeah, Cornhorn.
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, like, these were people who cared deeply about him, and it makes their death all the more tragic.
Yeah.
You know, I just, yeah, I'm super happy with it. It was super impressed. You know, one of my biggest, we talked about, you know, what we loved about it. I mean, I did have some complaints. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you think about the aging between
Oh
what's like,
God, yeah.
how Obi-Wan changed in 10 years, and
Then another 10 years are gonna be very rough somehow.
yeah, that's what we were talking about. And then,
Dude, he's gonna be
right before
suntanning on that porch. That's what's gonna happen. He's moving into a house. He's out of the cave. You know,
You're
he's
just
getting that sunlight.
sitting out in the dune sea, just fucking crisping up. But even
I hope they
Elizabeth,
do something that's like 5 years further, and he's just like old as shit.
it's just ancient. Elizabeth, my wife, was showing me a picture, and she's like, "Okay, this is even worse." And it was a photo of Owen and Beru in the prequels, and then
Yeah.
in the original trilogy. And it was like, okay, think these two photos are 20 years apart. Think that in the middle of this is what we just watched, and you're just like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. I also will say I think the volume is the most obvious in this show.
What do you mean by that?
Specifically episode 5.
As in what? I don't understand what you mean.
So, you know, well, you're familiar with the volume, correct? Like they use for Mando, and it's like they have like the back, like the LED wall that's all the way around, and usually it looks really, really good. But on the one planet where they just have all the stormtroopers and everything, like it's just like kind of flat in the background, and you kind of see it a little bit in the fight preceding episode 6, but I think it's much better there. But it's like knowing that it's there and that they used it for episode 5, that is like the one glaring shot where I'm just like, ooh, that is not anywhere on location.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now. So that's
Like so
their
much of the
set.
show feels like the world feels so much more lived in, and then we get to this one planet, like we do this cool shot, and then it's just like all these stormtroopers standing in this crater, and they're just lined up weirdly, and there's like this just happens to be a circle with no one in it, or like there's
Yeah.
no vehicles or any like characteristics to it.
Yeah, that's the problem with this green screen kind of stuff. I mean, I've talked to my wife and I have talked about this all the time because we're big fans of practical effects. Star Wars was really pivotal in puppeteering.
Yeah,
And
ILM
practical
is like
effects.
amazing.
And you know, you and I, Charlie, we talked about this when we did our original episodes on the original trilogy. And it's like you cannot change that. And like one of the worst things that they ever did to those movies is the remasters. 'Cause fuck
Literally the
George
CG.
Lucas. He's the worst human being. Not really, but you know, I'm very heartfelt for that.
The
that
only
kind of work.
justified CG is CGI Jabba.
Yeah, it looks a lot.
Although I do have a soft spot for like the Outrider in the one shot, and then like the one thing that goes, but in episode
Yeah.
4.
Other thoughts about the show. I really loved Tala. I thought it was an amazing character who was just, you know, it
So
shows
good.
like you can just throw a character whose start and end is maybe an hour and a half worth of content, but like she perfectly represented what it was to be with Star Wars, and like so much potential for a character that we really haven't seen. Hey, this was an Imperial officer who was involved in literally killing these, and so I'll get into more of this. The thought popped in my head, so let me keep myself focused. She was literally involved in killing force sensitive children. Did she know that's what they were doing?
No, but when she found out, she did something,
and then she changed and she did something, and she became a better person, and in the end she was willing to sacrifice everything for that. And it really does kind of show, like, that sets up for me in my mind Riva's choice at the end.
Agreed.
Riva doesn't know that, but as someone in the audience, you're getting that feeling that when Riva is done, like, she now has the choice.
Yeah. Also, who's mowing at like 8:40 at night? Sorry, it's
okay, Charlie. It happens. We're almost done. You live in a psychopathic suburban neighborhood.
I do.
Any other additional thoughts about the show, Charlie? I mean, I think we just gave it high praises. I mean, I said I had a couple criticisms.
Oh Lord,
I want to know your
froze
thoughts
on
in addition
stream.
to what I had.
Hold on. I love that. I don't know
What
why I
happened?
did that. It literally was just like input error, and then it just started working. Anyways, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Your
I was just
question.
basically saying, what are your thoughts?
Um,
I talked a lot, so I just kind of want to get your feeling on the show.
yeah, I definitely love this show. I also I've been trying to like be more active on Star Wars Twitter and TikTok. First off, I will say TikTok infinitely like less toxic than Twitter, obviously,
Oh yeah.
um but I do get tired of people like hating on this show because I think this is one of the better, most consistent, and like true to Star Wars projects they've done. Like it, it's like it just feels like everything's a known territory here. Like obviously, it's like Obi-Wan, Vader, classic. Can't get enough of that. But it's like I always love stuff set in this era prior to like the Battle of Yavin. During the reign of the Empire. But it's like, I mean, there's like not enough I can't say that I haven't already just said without just like praising the actors. Also, I did. Oh shoot, what's his name? O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character is also really good.
Oh
Roken.
my god, I'm so pissed at myself.
Yeah,
No, I gotta go apologize to my wife. She was literally like, "Oh, that's Ice Cube's son, right?"
it is.
I was like, "I don't think so." Totally right, 100% right.
Yeah, he
Well,
did a great job as Roken.
yeah, I
We
didn't
didn't
even
talk about
recognize
that.
it was him. I didn't even recognize it was him. I just thought it
It's
was his
fair.
character.
To
That's
be fair,
crazy.
his other like well-known acting role is him playing his dad,
Oh
in
yeah, and I
which he
mean I've
looks a
seen
lot like his dad, but he doesn't always look like his dad.
yeah, I mean literally the only thing he's been in other than that I know about is like fucking Godzilla and Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, that's true.
That's I mean I don't know what else he's been in, but that's the only thing I can tell you.
but
Um,
but yeah,
yeah, I mean
I love Obi-Wan's line. He's like, "There's not a lot of leaders, but you like, people follow you."
he says I'm just getting started.
Yeah,
That was super cool. Like
yeah.
this is where you and I,
Also, I
Charlie,
feel like the show is well written to the point where it's Star Wars. Don't get me wrong; people say goofy stuff, but a lot of the things just feel like very grounded and like colloquial. It's like I
100%.
love like even though Obi-Wan knows the answer to Leia's 10, she's like talking about all this stuff. He's like, "How old are you?" And she's like,
Yeah, no,
10.
no,
He's like,
100%. And I think it's a great point, and I think it's a great point to
the
close this
conversations
out.
just flow so well in this show.
But you're making a larger point. This show, and I think is what does it so well, and what Star Wars has been more successful at, in which most of the things pre-Disney were awful at doing, is it did a really good job of dropping us in somewhere, and we can get the feeling that there was something before this that was very tangible. This was a real world. We just
Yeah,
dropped in. We're like, oh shit, we got to figure out where we are, what time it is, what's going on,
yeah,
and then once the story's done, there will be characters who continue to live their lives after this. I have myself asking now. I want to know what um Rokin's doing. I want what's he doing?
I know, and that's why I'm
What's
hoping
Leia's
it's.
life looking
I
like
hope I
after
find
this?
out by the next Star Wars Jedi game.
You know, I'm asking myself, you know, where are these characters going? Where did we pick up? Where did we leave off? And it
Hmm.
doesn't just feel and that it doesn't just feel like this recycled like, hey, we're gonna take this 3 movie plot. Here's the hero's journey. Plop it in. Doesn't really matter. We'll set up some setting for what was before this, but once we get to the end, it doesn't really matter, and we'll move on. This exists so perfectly in the Star Wars universe that you're like, you feel like you're just a fly on the wall. You're just
Exactly.
there. Um, and I think part of that is what does it so well is one, you know, the writing, in terms of what takes place in the story, but two, definitely the dialogue. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so much better. And unfortunately, this is where I give Star Wars a lot of flack. This kind of just wins by default. I mean, the writing wasn't bad in any sense; it was
Yeah.
good. but this wasn't like the greatest dialogue I've ever seen in any film or any show ever.
Well, yeah.
It was really
Get ready
good for
for
Star Wars.
Andor, baby, 'cause that show kind of is.
Oh, we'll see, you know. But yeah, I have nothing more, Charlie. Do you have anything else
Yeah,
to add?
yeah. And I like that they established the hidden path, which
Mhm.
I should have put this in the news, but they had like a hilarious code name for the hidden path during the development of. We're both just typing during Jedi Survivor. I think it was like Mochi something. Why is Google so bad? Ugh. Mochi. Please, for the love of God. It's something stupid. It's like Mochi Express or whatever. But they had a funny name for the hidden path during development.
Mooney Metro.
Yeah, that's what it was. The Mooney Metro. It's because the hidden path came from the show, but they weren't allowed, or it came like it came in the development of this show and that game concurrently, but they weren't allowed to title that until like way later in development. And one of the devs they interviewed, he was talking. He was like, "I swear to God, I was so worried that was going to be somewhere in the dialogue during the game that we just forgot."
The quote from Pete Stewart: "I was honestly terrified until about a week before release that we were going to ship with the phrase Mooney Metro in the game somewhere.
Yeah,
Somewhere footage exists of actors performing with the code name."
Yep, which I want to see. But like about the hidden path.
He says, "I'm still not 100% convinced it still isn't unintentionally hidden in some obscure corner of the game." But yeah, it was really cool to see the hidden path and see that fleshed out. And I'm really glad we did Survivor before this, because it definitely is really nice to see how these two blended together.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about Star Wars, and like we talked about, like we're wondering like where the characters go and everything, but Star Wars always does this thing where it provides like a greater movement or like thing that's occurring in the galaxy that makes me interested in. Slight spoilers for Bad Batch season 2 when we get to that, but like we see all the clones like working together to free other clones, and like there's a whole mystery of what's going on there, which I love that. But it's like, I know for a fact once Bad Batch ends, we're gonna be like, okay, but what about all these clones? What are they doing now? And I my money is on that being the next show, of it being like all of them. But like Star Wars always provides this like lingering question that's greater than I feel like other things do.
Yeah, and that's a great
like,
point. I mean,
like
you're
media
looking
can
at
leave you with like a lingering thought of like, what was that? Or like the end of The Last of Us is like the one I think is like the easiest, is like, oh, was I really the good guy in the end of this? Or like what's, it paints everything in like this moral gray area, and like I think that's the easiest one to go to. But you're like, well, what happens next? Your obvious inclination is what happens next, but it's always like, it's either broad or it's very specific. Star Wars will give you like, okay, but like what are these three guys doing over here? What's going on with this?
No, 100%. And this is why Star Wars in and of itself is the third largest media franchise in the world.
What are the first two? Is it Marvel?
Pokemon and Mickey Mouse.
Is Mickey Mouse really still pulling it like that? Like, when was the last time
I think it's more of just, it's Mickey Mouse and Friends.
God.
Which, believe it or not, they made some money off of video games. We could talk about that at a separate time. But with Star Wars, you're totally right. Like, you have they're really good about creating, these stakes. The world is going on, and we can either be in that and explore part of it, or you can just say, hey, what happens in a world when X happens and all of this is happening in the background?
Yeah. Like all the trade dispute episodes in Clone Wars.
The second part can be nice, but it is really nice to have a really clean version of, yeah, there's a lot going on. Let's just fly you into this micro moment in there where, hey, this is just a couple days.
Like here's a week in the galaxy.
Very long life of Obi-Wan. I think that's a great point to make about why this show is so successful.
Yeah.
and why it does what it does, and I think it is a better show than social media gave it credit for.
Yes. And I feel like now we've covered all our bases on this
Yeah, I'm totally
overall.
good. I mean, final thoughts for me. This show perfectly sums up what Obi-Wan was as a character. It shows perfectly what a Jedi is about and what being a Jedi is about. Mercy, honor, love, seeking for the future, a better future. It it just captured that so well, and it was really refreshing to go from Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor in terms of our episodes and into this because we've really just gone through what it means to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
And we're left here with this
Look
perfect
at our
representation.
unintentional arc. Look at
And
that.
the final moments we have in this kind of arc, as you just said, are Master and Padawan walking to enlightenment together.
Yep.
And then we're left with when he reaches the original trilogy, we know he is a master through and through. And when he dies, he does so with peace and dignity and mercy for Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Strike me down.
The
And
only
it
thing in between that is
really
the
does
mall
highlight.
fight, which is also beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah. Any final thoughts, Charlie?
I think that'll do it for us if you want to take us to our outro.
Yeah, cool. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in from all across the galaxy. If you liked the episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast, following our podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Please, if you feel free to do so, share our podcast with a friend, family member who might enjoy it. If you want to interact with us, help us make the show even better, consider interacting with us on Discord or on Twitter using the links that'll be in the show notes. But once again, what's up, Troy?
Nothing.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
I was
So
gonna
you guys,
say, I was gonna wait until you were done and tell everyone what our Twitter handle was. That was about it.
cool. Go for it.
Yeah, our Twitter handle is at ORR Show for Outer Rim Radio Show.
Perfect. So you can go look at that, look at our show notes. But feel free to interact with us there. But once again, thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, and may the force be with you all.
May the Force be with you.